Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
Inside this box is a pair of football boots that I've probably had for about 6 or 7 years now, but never made a video about. And I guess what's interesting about them is that they happen to be the oldest football boots in my entire collection. As you can tell by this really old Nike box that most of you probably don't recognize at all. And this is just one of many football boots in my collection that I've never shown on YouTube. So if this is something that interests you, perhaps you'd like to see more of these boots on the channel, drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest and I guess the oldest football boots of 2023. So starting with the box, just because I think it's really interesting and in phenomenally good shape considering its age, it has an orange lid with a gray bottom, and you'll notice on the top it just has a very small Nike logo there in the corner with some of the other Nike branding there on the bottom. And if you take a look at the label, it's really not too far off the information that would be provided on a box label today, but what's cool about this pair is you're actually going to find the physical store branding, because at this time football boots were pretty much not being sold online, at least as far as I know. You can even see on one side of the box there's actually a store number and a date for what I can only assume was some kind of an inventory check, and then you can see a couple months later they did it again with a sticker on the other side. You can even see on the underside of the box lid the production date of the box, which was in 1992, officially making this box older than me. As for what's inside, remove the lid and you'll see because of how narrow the box is, the boots are pretty jammed in there. But before we get to the boots, I want to take a look at some of the really interesting extras. The first of which kind of looks like a Nike postcard. You can see the mailing address there on the back, but open it up and it's actually a customer feedback slip if you wanted to go through the trouble of filling it out and then actually mailing it to Nike to get your opinion on the product. And then they also included this little brochure with some information about the boots, as well as some absolute legends, just really cool pictures and imagery there, and just a tiny bit of information about the product itself, listed in a couple different languages. As for the boots themselves, they are the 1998 Nike Tiempo Pro M, what would have been the first takedown model or the only takedown model in the Tiempo line at this point in time. The top end model would have been the Tiempo Premier M. You can see the brand designation on the underside of the tongue. And what's particularly cool about this pair is because they came out of a physical retail store, you can see the original tag that the store put on the insole, giving you the model number, the SKU, as well as the original retail price of $50. Obviously, by today's standards, these football boots look and feel very, very cheap, but being that they did originally come out in 1998, it was a very significant year for Nike because that was the same year that they introduced the original Mercurial, which obviously would go on to kind of spark this technology focus in football boots and the whole speed boot category in general. This is far from the first Tiempo model. The original Tiempo came out in 1984. It didn't really catch on in terms of popularity until 1994, and then for the 98 World Cup, Nike introduced some subtle tweaks, mainly the introduction of a little bit of royal blue, predominantly on the back of the heel, which at the time was considered a fair amount of color. Nonetheless, being that this is a takedown model, it still features a full leather upper, although being that these football boots are 25 years old now, the leather itself is a little bit on the harder and crusty side, but it is leather pretty well all the way through. You can see it's even cracking a little bit here on the left boot along either side of the ankle. It's relatively cheap in terms of its overall construction, and that the heel liner is just this really soft kind of padded material. And something I thought was kind of interesting that you don't really see from Nike or any brand for that matter is that they actually printed the size, this being a 9 US, in the form of a number 9 in actual paint right on the side of the heel liner. I thought that was a really interesting touch. Again, the Nike Tiempo Pro branding on the underside of the tongue, central lacing system, standard U-throat construction, really complex stitching pattern and kind of combination of, I guess, pieces to create an upper of a football boot. I think leather football boots moving forward from this would become a lot more simple. Certainly by the time Nike introduced the Tiempo Legend model. And then moving to the base of the football boot, you'll find that the sole plate is kind of like this solid rubber material, typical of a lot of football boots at the time. Not the lightest, not the most premium, and then of course conical studs pretty much all the way through. Something you'd expect to find on a budget-friendly football boot these days, but being that this was a first takedown model and not a top-end one, again, you can only expect so much. I don't know if you guys can see this, but on the table are just little bits that are kind of crumbling off as I'm handling these boots, which is both cool and sad at the same time. And just because I do it with all the new boots, I thought it'd be fun to see how much these weigh. Truthfully, I have no idea, and honestly, they're not as heavy as I would personally expect them to be, but in a size 9 US, you can see that the 25-year-old Tiempo Pro M weighs in at 11.65 ounces, the equivalent of 330 grams, which by today's standards is obviously on the heavier side, but again, not as heavy as I personally would have expected. And there you have it, the oldest boots in my entire collection. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.